What's up with the objection? I need to talk to my wife first. We're going to talk about it today. And if you're already thinking, like, where's this going? What's happening? We're going to talk, don't worry. We're going to get into this and we're going to talk about a little Facebook post that I saw just the other day. Hey, my name is Blake Benz. I'm the host of the Good Advice Podcast, and you've come to the right place to learn how to do business better. We're going to talk on the show today about the actionable, practical things you need to know in order to sell more and run a better business. But before we dive in, here's a word from one of the businesses who sponsored today's episode. Check out this quick ad, and we'll be back soon. There's one single piece of advice that I give to business owners who are ready to scale their business drastically. And that's knowing exactly what you need to hand off so that you can continue focusing on what you're an expert in. It amazes me when I talk to business owners who are doing their own bookkeeping and tax prep, and worse, that they're going through all this paperwork at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, even midnight, slaving away trying to make sense of all of the numbers for their business. Business owners who are making it happen have already figured out that you can't do it all yourself. That's why I recommend Steve Lay with Equity Business Solutions. Not only is he an expert in bookkeeping and tax prep, but what I love about Steve is that he'll sit down with you and help you make sense of the value of your business beyond just reading a spreadsheet. You'll be able to make better decisions, and more importantly, you're going to save yourself the crucial time you would have spent going through QuickBooks or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever it is that keeps us up late at night. So save yourself some time and some money by giving Steve Lay a call at Equity Business Solutions, and he'll show you the value beyond your numbers. Go to equitybusinesssolutionsllc.com to find out more. So we're going to talk a little sales objections on the show today. And, if you've deep dove into sales objections in the past, maybe done a little research on sales, maybe trying to get a little better at sales, maybe you don't have a history in the sales world, and you're a small business owner, you're figuring out how to sell as you're running the business. One of the things that often pops up is handling objections. I don't really have much content around this. I think, the way that I do business, the way that I sell is so conversational and relational that I generally don't sell in this way. I don't generally have like a Rolodex of, okay, they said this objection now, It's the third objection on my list. Let me go to my spreadsheet and here's what I say in response. Okay, this is what I say. I just I don't operate that way. And I think that there's some people who they do business in that way because, maybe they're not great at sales. Maybe they're trying to, get better at it, practice, all those kind of things. And that's totally fine. I will say that the farther you get into your sales world, into your sales regimen, the less you should lean on those things, only because every person you sell to is going to be different. Every need is going to be slightly different. And sure, as you get further into the business, there's going to be certain things that are just very similar and pretty, by the book, but not everyone is exactly the same. So the further along you can get into selling, where you're no longer relying on a script, where you're no longer relying on say these 5 things. I razzed in an email a piece of social media that I saw just a few years ago that was basically, here's the one line you can put in any email to close the deal. And I think actually the clickbait title of this was something like, how to take your average sale from 4 figures to 6 figures or something like that. And let's be really clear. There's no one-liner in an email you can drop. There's no one thing you can say. There's no simple handling of an objection that's going to suddenly make you able to close $100,000 plus deal. It's not going to happen. What will happen to have deals like that is becoming the expert in your field, becoming trusted, becoming known, for people to engage with you. And even if they don't buy from you, they know that you know what you're talking about. They know that you do business in a good way. And either they come back to you down the road when the timing is better, or they are marketing for you. They're referring business to you. They're talking about you. They're saying, oh man, you got to talk to Blake. Oh, I know a guy. I had a guy actually who sent me some business just a few weeks ago. and he was telling me how the referral came about. And he was talking to this other guy who needed some marketing help, and he goes, "Hey, I know a guy. I got just the guy for you." I like hearing stuff like that. It lets me know that I'm I'm on the right track. But, I'm 7 years deep into this thing, so that's not something that I was getting on day 1 or year 2 or even year 3. It's something that I get now only because I put a lot of work and time and energy into being reputable and reliable and actually delivering on what we say we can deliver on. So, that's kind of like the disclaimer on all of this is, you got to understand there is no simple answer to sales. There's no easy button you can press to sell better. It comes through reps, it comes through time. And in particular, I want to talk about this thing I saw on Facebook. I have, I don't mean this like in a weird way or like gloating way, but I have so many connections on Facebook. The friend request thing. I have so many, and this has just been using it over the years from when I was a teacher, from when I was a camp counselor to now just being in the business world. I mean, I get a dozen. I get lots of these requests often, and they're usually people that I don't know, or I check like mutual friends, which I always cursor over mutual friends, where I'm like, who is this person? And, the more I get into, like, the entrepreneurial world, sometimes I'll have requests pop up that it's like, "Oh, this is a friend of so and so." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I know that person." Well, in this case, I someone posted on my wall or well, excuse me, something they posted showed up on my feed, and I immediately was thrown by it. I thought, "Who in the world is this person?" I looked and saw that we were friends. And I thought, I have no idea who this person is, but I immediately unfriended the person, disconnected from that person and was like, man, I do not want that person's content on my feed. And basically what this person was talking about the objection. He had just been on a sales call, I guess. He had just been in a sales conversation and he was quoting the person who gave this objection. The person said, "Let me talk to my wife first." And then that was in quotes. Well, then this individual was then writing on his wall, or however they say it these days, I don't know. In my mind, it's still a wall. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but this person they quoted that comment, "Let me talk to my wife first," and like was in all caps, basically screaming about this prospect and said some extremely ugly things that I'm not going to repeat on the podcast. It stopped me. It stopped the scroll for sure. And I was surprised all the comments too were like joining in. Like this was very much, the longer I've been in the business world, there's like a bro marketer style out there. There's like a bro cliche, there's just sales bro. There's sales bros out there. And if you've been in business, you know what I'm talking about. You've probably seen it. It's just this was a sales bro. And the things that he said was extremely ugly to the point where I was just like, wow, I don't know who you are. Like, I don't want to interact with you ever. I never want to do business with you. But it got me thinking though. It got me thinking about this. And I was thinking, this is one of the many objections that pop up that I think we miss the mark in how we deal with it. So what on this particular comment, let me talk to my wife first, which this is just in reference to the Facebook post. Women say this about their husband, men say this about their wife, about their partner, spouse, whoever, it gets brought up. Let me talk to my business partner, yada, yada. And I will say there are some decently good ideas around this that I'll go ahead and address, one of which being asking the person you're selling to, hey, is there anyone else that needs to be on this call that's not? Hey, is there anyone else who's going to be making a decision on this that we need to go ahead and loop in so they can be part of the process? And so sometimes someone might say, well, I'm probably going to talk to my wife about this or I'm going to talk to my spouse. Well, hey, let's go ahead and get them on the call. And now I personally don't do that. I I just I understand it in concept. I understand why someone recommends that. I I have found that the conversation becomes much more it becomes less of a relational conversation and much more a presentation. I think anytime that a sales conversation feels like a presentation, it's not good for your prospect. I think it creates just too much of a gap, too much of a barrier between you and the person you're going to be working with and serving and delivering this service to. So I don't like that feeling. But I will say, certainly more so in like a business sense. Hey, are you the decision maker for this? No, I'm not. Actually, my boss is. Hey, you know what? I think just to save time and best serve you guys, it'd probably be better if I was talking to that person. Can you introduce me? Or, hey, you know what? Why don't you get us all three on a call and let's talk this through together because I want to make sure this is something you actually need. I want to explain the service and product to you. I don't wanna and again, you always frame the stuff in the interest of the buyer. I don't wanna waste your time. Hey, and I don't wanna have you have to then go present or share or, I think it's gonna be a better use of your time and more respectful of your time if we just get everyone who needs to be on the call. Now, I'll address this a little later in the show today, but you will also, by the way, you will have people who lie to you. And that is because people are human. That's the simple answer. People are human. They will lie. They will say, and I'll give you some examples of this. You'll say, "Are you the decision maker?" And they'll say, "Yes, I am." And you'll say, "So there's no one else who's you are the person who's gonna make this decision. You're the one who pulls the trigger." And they'll say, "Yes, there is no one else but me. I own this. I have full authority to do whatever I want, whenever I want, and spend however much money I want to." And then they will come back and say, "Hey, my boss said that we can't do it." And you'll be like, "I thought you were the boss. Who's the boss? Who's this guy?" So, "Oh, well, actually, I'm really actually the assistant to the regional manager, not the," yeah, and the same thing's true for like budget. You'll talk to someone and you'll say, something I'm a big fan of is talking budget at the start of the call. And I don't always do a great job of this. Sometimes the moment passes and it's a little too awkward to go back and be like, let's talk about price before we get into it. But, I might talk to someone and say, hey, yeah, the budget is $6,000. Is that something that, I might say, hey, cash flow wise, you're going to look to spend about $1,000 a month. Is that something that's doable cash flow wise for you? Is that an investment that matches your expectation for what you thought you would be spending here? And sometimes people will say, oh my gosh, no, it's way more. And then other times people will say, oh no, that's exactly what I thought it was. And other times, even beyond that, they'll be excited. I had a guy that I was talking to from an SEO perspective, and I said, hey, we're about $1,250 a month. Is that in line with your expectation? And he was like, well, man, the other agency quoted me $5,000 a month. So this sounds really good. So sometimes, it's there's some excitement around that where then you start to wonder like, man, am I too cheap? I don't know. But what I have found is just like people will lie about being the boss, you'll have people who they're embarrassed around the price. They're embarrassed that their business isn't more successful than they present it to be. And so when you say, is this in line with your budget? They'll say, oh yeah, for sure. Totally. Yeah. 100%. I can do that. But they really can't do that. They really can't afford it. So just understand that even when you handle these things the right way, you're still going to have people who lie to you, and lying to you sounds a little harsh. You're not going to have like any evil people that you're selling to. It's just human nature, human nature. People aren't always going to be totally forthcoming, and they're going to give half truths or things that aren't exactly the case. And so even when you're great at sales, you're still going to be at the not expense. You're at the what's the word? Goodness. You'll still have to deal with those kinds of people. So, but let's talk about this one in particular. I need to talk to my spouse. I need to talk to my wife. Let's talk about where the sales bro missed it and what happened here. Sales bro gets this comment and immediately says back to the person, well, I thought you were the man of the house. I thought you were capable of making this decision. Did I misunderstand who you were? I thought you were serious about this. Did I misunderstand your commitment to this? Hey, we really don't work with, people who are kind of casual. They aren't serious about real results. Like we get real results, real results. So if you want that, I need to work with someone who they want real results too. Is that not you? Did I misunderstand? And this was a combination of what this person in particular said, but and also the people in the comments. And I was a bit horrified. I mean, it's so manipulative. And but I'm not surprised. I'll go ahead and tell you in the sales world, the marketing world, I've heard variations of this over the years. I was on a call one time with a guy who was being pitched a product, and the person said no, and said they weren't going to pay for it, too expensive or something like that. And or actually, I think what actually happened. Now that I think about it, the person asked about the price, and the price was very high. And the customer to be, the prospect, said, "Well, that's really expensive. Like what all is entailed in that?" And rather than like walking through it, the sales bro basically flipped it on him and said, "Well, hey, you know what, man? We're actually looking for people who like really want to make an investment and they want to go far, and they're trying to get some real results. And if you're scared, like if you're not willing to make that investment in yourself, like I don't want to waste my time. Like I don't want to work with people who are lazy." And gave like some answer like that. And I was like, wow, goodness. It's not any different than this one with when someone says, I thought you were the man of the house. I thought you were the one who made decisions. So here's the big issue with this, other than it being like incredibly awful, is here's what I have found is that there is a culture of sales people out there who, when the sale does not happen, they flip it and they manipulate and they make it about the prospect rather than about how they failed to adequately answer the risk the person was experiencing. So think about this for a second. Someone tells you no, and they tell you no in a variety of ways. They don't call back. They tell you, whatever objection it is, what have you. That is not an opportunity to harass your prospect and gaslight them into not being serious enough about working together. That is an opportunity for you to reflect and understand, why am I not able to close this deal? How am I missing it here for this person to not feel good about working with me? And then how can I improve that? How can I do better? Now, sometimes there's great reflection that happens here after the fact. If you like record your sales conversations and you listen through it and you realize, oh, okay, yeah, I see what happened there. I had a sales conversation that I missed, I guess a month, maybe 2 months ago. Person called. My kids, I didn't know the number. I answered the phone. My kids were going crazy. It was like 8 in the morning. They were going nuts. I'm trying to talk to my kids. This person is asking about working together. I immediately quote a price of like $6,000. And the person's like, okay, yeah, send me an email. And I'm like, and I just knew. I knew like in this like 10-second span that I had lost this person. And so in reflecting on that, I thought, okay, what I probably should have done, I'm not in a position to have like a real conversation with this person. I'm not in a position to ask this person like, hey, well, what's going on? What's happening with your business? I'm not in a position to really let this conversation breathe a little bit and try to connect with this person and understand a little bit more about what's happening in their business and why they have called me in the first place. Instead, I'm in a very chaotic, high stress environment, and I am actively talking to the prospect and my children at the same time. What I should have done is said, hey, I'm going to need to call you back. How about I call you back in about 15 minutes? Let me get my kids situated. I'll be right back. And part of the reason I didn't do that was because I thought the person's on the phone right now. I don't want to lose them. There's nuance to sale. There's absolutely some gray there where, you try to make the best decision that you can. And sometimes it's the right decision. Sometimes it's not. But the point is that you're always reflecting on, why did this not pan out? What went wrong here? So you can do that in the moment. You can do that after the fact. You can do that, recording and listening back through your sales conversations, or asking other people to listen to your sales conversation and say, hey, what happened here? Where did I miss it? That's one thing you can do. You can also ask the person, which might horrify some of you, but you might ask the person, I had a sales conversation. Oh man, this was probably 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. Guy calls me, wants to work together. This is for the consulting business. And I named the price. And I think back then it was like maybe $2,000, $3,000 or something. And he said, well, let me think about it. Let me think about it. And whatever way I said, what do you want to think about? I said, hey, when I hear that, usually what it means is the person wants to tell me no because it's too expensive or it's something about the way that I sold the service. Would you do me a favor? Would you tell me which one is it today? Is it the price or is it something about me? And this guy, he goes, it's not the price. And I just was like, okay, single tier. But I mean, what more valuable a moment for your prospect to let you know, hey, you didn't convince me. Hey, sorry, man. I didn't really, I feel like I just don't feel like it'd be a good investment, you know? And I think there's people out there who really try to avoid looking in the mirror and realizing where they're missing it in sales. And so instead they make all sorts of promises. They effectively lie to their prospect. They say, "Oh yeah, of course I had a sales guy one time on a conversation where he was like, "Yeah, we get consultants to 8 figures." And I was like, 8 figures? What do you mean 8 figures? Or no, he said 10 figures, 10 figures. And I was like, "Isn't that like $1 billion?" And he was like, kind of like backpedaled. And I was like, I was like, "Come on, man. This I obviously don't believe you. Like, come on, dude." And he's like, "No, no, no, for real, we do." And I just knew he was lying to me, So I think there are salespeople out there who, who make all sorts of lies and claims and things like that. And if you're like me and you're on social media, you're on LinkedIn, what have you, you're getting these pitches all over the place. You're getting it in your inbox, you're getting an email. And I'll just say, if you hate that kind of stuff, you do not have to become that kind of stuff to become better at sales. But for real, you can ask somebody in the moment, hey, where did I miss it? Where did I miss it today? Hey, help me understand. It sounds like you're hesitant. And it doesn't have to always, by the way, it doesn't have to always be so like, hey, I know this was a bad sales call. Can you tell me how I can improve? It doesn't have to be that. It can be, and as you get better at sales, you get more conversational and you'll get more confident. And so the person says, yeah, yeah, okay, that's interesting. And you might say, hey, you sound hesitant. Am I right? Do you sound a little hesitant? Yeah, I'm a little hesitant. Okay, tell me where have I missed helping you see the benefit versus the risk? Or what can I do to make this feel a little less risky for you? Hey, help me understand what is it about this in particular that's like really sticking in your mind that's making you apprehensive? Because I'd love to be able to talk about it, and I'd love to, more importantly, if you have questions, for you to be able to ask me questions about it. So sometimes it's just in being communicative, you're just calling out the emotions you're sensing so that the person can then they might say, man, I've just never spent this much money on something before. Or, man, I just don't know about this. This seems a little scary to me. Or, man, I've been burned many times in the past. Okay, can we talk about this in a way that's going to mitigate the risk for you? If I can do something to mitigate the risk, would that be something you'd be interested in talking about? Well, yeah, I would. Okay. And then if there's some way you can adjust the product or the service or what have you, you can have that conversation. But a lot of times too, in having that conversation, you realize sometimes this person was never going to be a good customer in the first place. The person says, hey, I told you that the cost was okay, but actually, it's 1,000 a month, and that is about how much money I make in profit per month. The business is barely surviving as is, yada, yada, yada. And so in those cases, you might say, hey, it'd be kind of a disservice for me to sell you this. Like, you have some things to work out, and then out of the overflow of the success of your business, then you can reinvest in services like this. And that's going to make you happier. It's going to make me happier. I don't have to worry about you paying your bills on time. You don't have to worry about this being a good investment. Like, let's process let's make this work in a way when it makes sense, not just because you want this or someone told you to get it or what have you. But point being, there's a way to approach this and talk this through rather than manipulating or yelling or getting. I say yelling. You would think people don't yell on a sales call, but I had a guy who got really pissed. He told me he had been in business for like 20, 30 years, family business. It was some like internet marketing service. And I had a friend of mine who had bought from him. And, unfortunately, that friend then recommended me. And it's kind of like this whole sales thing of like, do you know anyone else who could use this business, this service? And my friend recommended me. So I'm on this call with this person. And there were just some things that didn't make sense, like some red flags. You've been in business long enough. It's just certain things you just know it doesn't work that way. Like, for example, the person who's like, yeah, we have an email service and we're going to take over your email for a week and you're going to see your revenue triple. Okay, well, I wasn't born yesterday. I know I know there's nothing out there that's like that. So it's a red flag. It's too good to be true. It doesn't work that way. Well, so he said something like that. That was just too good to be true. And I said, he said, "Hey, so can I get a yes from you today?" And I said, it's going to be no. It's going to be no. I think what I'd like to do, I think I'd like to wait about 6 months. I want to see how I want to see how it goes for him. And if you are getting the results you say you will, he will let me know and I will happily do business with you. Which I think, see, I think this seems like a perfectly fine answer. He did not like this answer. And he said, that's not doable for us, which I thought was interesting because it was like, this isn't like you refusing a breakup. Like, we haven't even exchanged money. Like, you can't just say no to me saying no. But he was like, that doesn't work for us. And I go, okay, well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. And he goes, well, I just don't understand. And I go, okay, what do you not understand? And he goes, I don't understand why you wouldn't do business with us today. Like, why would you wait 6 months? And then he had some comments that were like, isn't your business important to you today? Is it, do you really think it's going to grow on its own? And I was just like, okay, whatever, man. And I said, hey, I'm going to be really candid. I'm going to stick to what I said. I want to wait 6 months. And this guy said, but I told you we're a family owned, we're a 30-year business. And which was interesting to me because I thought, well, that doesn't really mean anything to me. There's plenty of businesses that have survived long term, but he was mad at me. And I think anytime you're mad at your prospect, you probably aren't doing a great job at sales, which ties us all the way back to Facebook sales, bro. If you're mad at an objection, if you're mad at what your prospect says, it's not them, it's probably you. Now, last thing I'll say, in addition to the nuance of you're working with people, people are interesting. Some are difficult. Some aren't totally forthcoming, In addition to all of that, you're going to do business with people who aren't the norm. And so I had a guy on a sales call and he said, I want to talk to my wife about it first. And I said, hey, that's totally fine. I talk to my wife about every decision we make. I said, I love that. I will say when people tell me that, they're trying to let me off easy. And I want you to know that the way I do business is if this is not a good fit, if this is not something that you think is a good investment, I want you to know you can tell me. No hurt feelings. I don't want to waste time. I don't want to harass you. You just tell me flat out, is this something that's a good fit? And if it's not, let's just both go separate ways and let's save you, me harassing you about this deal. And he goes, no, like seriously, that is just how I do business is I talk to my wife about it. We walk it through. And so when I say that, I do want to do this, I am invested. But I do want to talk to her. Some people just want to talk to their spouse. That's fine. Now, in this case, this guy did come back and say, hey, it's not a good fit. So, I mean, take what you will from that. Who knows? But just try not to take it so personal. You're going to be in so many sales conversations every day. I mean, in every week, really. If you're not having dozens of sales conversations, you're probably probably missing it a little bit. There's probably a little bit of a miss there. You could probably be having more sales conversations. I was talking to a guy who his business was struggling, and we were talking about cold sales. And I said, well, how many sales calls are you on? And he said, I do about one. And I said, okay, like one a day? And he goes, about one a week. And I was like, dude, no way, man. That's not doable. I mean, just if you're great at sales and you're closing 1 in 3, 30%, 52 weeks a year, what is that? What's what third of, is that 14? Is that right? No, it's not 14. 18, I think. I think that's 18. I don't know. I can't do math. Sorry, guys. Let's just say it's 18 for the sake of the example. Okay. So if you're doing one a week, let's say you take 2 weeks off for vacation, and that makes it messier. Let's just keep 52. You close 18 deals in a year. What's your average buy? What's your average spend from a customer? If it's a couple $100, you're in trouble. If it's $10,000, different story. But you have to really have a conversation with yourself on, am I having enough sales conversations? And, just getting more reps in, getting better at sales, dealing with these objections, navigating these pain points. The more you do it, the better you become. And the more you can be natural, have a real conversation, talk like a human, talk like a real person, make recommendations, let them know what's a good fit, what's not a good fit. I'm on sales conversations all the time where the person on the front end tells me they want it. And then we get on the actual call and we start to talk about it. And I'm like, dude, you don't want this. Not in a manipulative way. It's just like, it's like either you don't have the budget for it, or it's not the right time. Or a conversation I was on the other day, it's a guy who sells a very niche apparel. It's an apparel Shopify store. And I said, dude, you don't need SEO. You don't need that kind of marketing. You could do a paid campaign on your own, which he was already doing. He was crushing it. And I was like, dude, I would just double down on that. So you don't need content though. Not for your kind of business. But that's what people want in a good salesperson. This is someone you're going to trust long-term. So naturally, you want to know they know what they're talking about. So don't get mad at your prospects. Don't go to Facebook to complain about them, even though we've all had those customers that make you think, what am I doing? What's going on here? But all that to say, continue to sell better, and continue to sell in a way that's in the best interest of your buyer. Not just in your best interest, but in their best interest too. First of all, I would say. Hey, thanks for listening to today's podcast episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, what are you waiting on? Make sure you're subscribed and following the podcast wherever you are. And don't forget, you can always support the Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. You can support the podcast for as little as $5 a month. Or if you're a business, you want to advertise on the show, you can always reach out, Blake at goodadvicecoaching.com. That's all we got. That's today's Good Advice. I'll see you later.